Um, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Duncan here today. I've known him for so many years, and in my mind, he'll always be a young gun, although he's now grown a beard and he's a little bit grey, and he keeps on telling me I'm no longer a young gun, but Duncan, not in my eyes. So keep on doing what you're doing. So Duncan actually didn't start out with a wine career ahead of him. He decided that he wanted to make real money and did a business degree. But unfortunately, in Cape Town, there's so many waves that you can surf every afternoon that Duncan got stuck to his surfboard and unfortunately didn't pitch for the exams in time. And of course, during the surfing is when you learn all about drinking wine afterwards when you come out of the sea, and that was his passion. He went to Elsenburg and studied winemaking there and was obviously a bright star from the very start, because his first employment was at Cape Point Vineyards, which was the talk of the town and the top of the hill for all, particularly white wine, Sauvignon Blanc in particular wines. And he struck out on his own a couple of years ago. He's also a member of the exclusive Cape Winemakers Guild. And with that, Duncan has actually mentored quite a lot of young winemakers through the system of the Cape Winemakers Guild. So over to you, Duncan, and welcome. And thank you very much for being here with us. I know that your wine is blubbing away there in the background.
Yeah, thanks, Winnie. Thanks, guys. It's lekker to be here. I was told this was quite a fancy group of people, and then I see Mark Allen's just joined at the bottom here. So. No. Hey, Mark, lekker to see you, man. Now, listen, it's thank you for having me, guys. It's really nice for me to be able to tell you a little bit about what we get up to. Thanks for the kind words, Winnie. It's easy to live in Cape Town and go surfing down here, I have to say. I'm sure you guys have all been here before, so it's we live in a really nice part of the world. So yeah, so we've got a small little wine business. I don't know if many of you have heard about Savage or had any of the wines. We don't make a hell of a lot, little bits and pieces here. We also not out in the beautiful winelands. You know, most guys wake up in the morning and sort of look out their front door into rolling hills of vineyards. We open our front door and look at a pink sex health clinic across the road here in Salt River. So it's a little bit different to your average wine farm. You know, we've got like homeless people and things like that outside. But, you know, it's kind of like interesting. When I started off the business, it was, you know, a means to an end for us. We didn't want to involve any investors in the business. We wanted to build it up ourselves. So we bought two little buildings in an up-and-coming area in Salt River. You know, many people in London from London who've come here have said it's sort of very Shoreditch like 20 years ago, if that makes sense. But super interesting, and our business has been based over the last couple of years on, well, and still is, on sourcing different vineyards from around all over the Western Cape. So what we do now is we started basically buying fruit, and now what we do is lease vineyards. We farm the stuff ourselves. I was very lucky to, in my time at Cape Point Vineyards, do all the farming and all of that as well. So that's my real passion, is farming. And now we've been able to sort of, as we've developed relationships with these growers, you know, the sad thing about COVID is we've lost the social element that we all live for, because I think that's the thing, one of the things that makes the wine industry so great is, you know, we were talking about it the other day. I consult to a property that's a new farm, and we're trying to get importers around the world. And it's not the same on Zoom. You know, in the past, we would be in the UK, or we'd be in Sweden or something. We'd have a serious tasting, and then inevitably we'd drink too much wine and have a bloody good time. And if you get on with the guys, then you do a deal and off you go. But we've kind of lost that, you know. But with my business model, something that's been really fantastic is I spend a lot of time driving around between all the farms I work with. And over the years, you know, you become, when I was at Cape Point, you sort of so focused on one property. And as I sort of traveled around the winelands, you get to know your own backyard that much better and get to know the people. And, you know, we deal with farmers who maybe have a small little patch of grapes, but mostly grow citrus or wheat or sheep. And you're dealing with guys who have no sort of background or reference points in the wine industry, but you meet these incredible South Africans who kind of just know their farm properties, you know. So whether they're farming with wheat, sheep, citrus, they understand their environment, they understand their soils, they understand their place. And it's quite an amazing opportunity for me to come in and tap into this pool of knowledge. You know, I know what I want to achieve out of the site and think I understand the site in a fairly short space of time, but you don't really. You know, there's so many subtleties from a soil point of view, weather point of view, and all of that you miss, and that these guys who farm there for a number of generations are able to help you. And you know, it's you end up having a bloody great time with so many of these farmers. I have to say, most of you probably don't know what Witblitz is, but it's a spirit that the guys generally distill on the farms in South Africa. They'll distill anything, and as long as it's got alcohol in it, the guys will enjoy it. And I've ended up having to drink a lot more of my share of that stuff than I would have liked to over the years. But you've got to build up the relationships with these farmers, and we've done well, I think. So we can't complain. So I've put together, I'm not very good when it comes to presentations in terms of slideshows and that. So I've put together just a few slides of the places we work with and some of the stories, you know, that link to some of the stories behind our wines. So I'm going to slide of the range of wines and our labels. Some of you may have seen our packaging, some not. You know, when we started the business, my father forced me to do a business plan, and we haven't stuck to an ounce of it, but we had to do it anyway, just to try and get us in the right direction. And in that business plan, I said I was never going to make more than 2 wines, and now we make 8. So it's actually 9, but 8 is the core of what is Savage Wines. And it's unfortunately, you know, the wine industry is, as you guys all know, it's a very emotional business. I mean, you know, if you think about business, emotion and business don't generally go well together. You know, the farmers in Malmesbury say it's better to dig a hole in your back garden and burn your cash than be involved in the wine industry, because at least you can see where your money's going. But the wine industry, it is like that, you know, but at the same time, it offers this incredible, rewarding sort of scenario. My late father-in-law, he was a banana and macadamia nut farmer in the Lowveld. And his mates, you know, farming with avos and all those places. You know, those guys didn't go home at night and chop up an avo and celebrate around the table that was the best bloody avo they've ever farmed. You know, it's we can go home with the fruits of our labor, and it tastes good and it makes you feel good. So it's the wine industry in that respect is obviously super rewarding, and for us, it's a really you know, everyone gets on, and it's great. So let me stop rambling on and let me share my screen here and show you guys a little bit about what we're up to. So, okay, so that's obviously just our business and some of the drawings that we've got. Why is that not moving on there? Oopsie. Okay, I'm not sure why this is not moving along. Sorry, guys.
It's perfect, Duncan.
Okay, you can see this one, but I'm trying to shift on to the next one, and I'm not sure why it's not doing it.
Oh.
Okay, maybe this is not going to work. Hang on one sec.
It did earlier.
I know. I don't know why it's not doing it now. And when these things don't work with me, then it's really a problem, because for me to try and figure out how to get it right again.
Call Manette. Call Manette.
Hang on a sec. Let's just. I think this should do it now. Let's try. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's our range of wines. You know, the one thing we've got is I was blessed with a fairly good surname. Savage is my surname, and we thought, you know, with a good surname and this, you know, we wanted to use the name, the strength of the name, and stick it on a bottle. So my good mate Anthony Lane from Anthony Lane Design, he and I came up with these labels, and that was the first 2 on the left, which is the Savage White and the Savage Red. So we've got a bloody good surname, but we were very unimaginative when we called them Savage White and Savage Red. But you know, it's kind of just stuck. But you know, someone said to me the other day, it's at least keeping it simple. But the white is those are the 2 wines that we started the range with. So the white is Sauvignon and Semillon, and in some vintages there's a bit of Chenin in the blend. The red is now straight Syrah, but it's always been a blend of Syrah, Grenache, and Cinsault up until 2016. And the reason for that was, when we embarked on these projects and trying to get to understand and work with the different vineyards, we didn't really know what to expect. So we were very generic, if I can say that, in the beginning. Both wines were Western Cape origin. We were trying to get to understand the soils and the subtleties and what we could do, because you can't really understand it over one vintage. You have to try and figure it out over time. So as we've now progressed, the range has expanded as we've gotten to know the sites. So if you look, just the next wine on is a wine called Never Been Asked to Dance. That's the Chenin that we've always used in the Savage White, which is now standing on its own. The next one is Follow the Line, which is the Cinsault. The Cinsault we always used to blend into Savage Red, so that's now become Follow the Line. The Grenache has become Thief in the Night, which is with the fence. We've got the Girl Next Door, which is the Wind Bent Tree. We've got Are We There Yet, which is the old wind turbine. And then Not Tonight Josephine, which is the little sticky we make every now and again, just for a bit of fun. But it's quite cool because, through the relationships we've developed with the various growers and the sites, as these wines have kind of found their personalities in our sort of winery and setup, it's been so cool to see them evolve. Never Been Asked to Dance, the Chenin was never actually supposed to be a Chenin. We work with a guy in Valiesdorp who's got some wonderful old Semillon. And he never told me this, but I crossed the road the one day to go and have a look at his other piece of ground. And there was a 54-year-old Claret Vineyard. And the Claret had never been into a bottle or a barrel or a tank on its own ever. The guys, it was being picked by a co-op in the local area. And they used to literally, can you believe it, that there's still people that do this today? They start at one end of the valley, and if it's white, they pick it until they get to the other end, and then they come back and pick all the red. And it's all just got blended together. So this little Claret Vineyard, we put 2 years of effort into it, farming it, and we made one wine. And that was the 2015. We made a Claret, and that was going to be this wine, because I told the story to a good mate of mine, Justin Knock. He's an MW based in the UK. He's an Aussie. It pains me to say I got the name from an Aussie, but he's at least a good Aussie. And he said to me, "Oh, mate, so she's never been asked to dance." And I was like, "Geez, Justin, that's the most amazing name for a wine." So we settled on the name as Never Been Asked to Dance. And then promptly, as we had bottled the first vintage, the farmer phoned me and said, "Duncan, I'm sorry, but well, in Afrikaans, he said, jammer om vir jou kak te hoor," which I'm not going to translate directly, but he basically said, sorry, he's pulling the vineyard out. And because the apple price in South Africa has been, on another level for the last 10 years. In the early 2000s, you couldn't give an apple farm away. And now the guys are making so much cash, they don't want anything to do with the grapevine. So we lost that Claret Vineyard. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, because I happened to get to meet a wonderful old lady in the form of Agnes de Vos. And Agnes is 83. She still drives her Isuzu bakkie around. No, she's 84 now, my apologies. She still drives her Isuzu bakkie around the farm, cucking everyone out that they're not working hard enough. And she's the most amazing lady with the most amazing energy. And she's got a 64-year-old, which is now 65, block of Chenin Blanc. And, we've taken this little block under our wing. It's anything but, the scenario of the Claret Vineyard, where that vineyard had never been asked to dance. This vineyard's, a little bit tired, been through about 10 different winemakers, been stuck into bottles so many times, and she's been left for dead. So we've sort of got stuck in there. A third of the vines are dead. We've replanted all the dead vines it's mostly Chenin, but we've planted things like Picpoul, Petit Manseng, especially because of their high acid, So in South Africa, obviously we've got loads of sun, but we don't necessarily have the acidity or the backbone in the wines that we would like sometimes. And we don't want to get it from a bag. We'd like to get it naturally if we can. So all those vines will come on stream, and we'll slowly start to see this vineyard blossom. And that's actually quite a cool story, because, I looked at it, we lost a friend of ours a few years ago. We were all at the house. Everyone was super somber. There was 12 people there, old Harold. You might remember him when Harold had passed away, and the mood was so somber. And yet our kids, my kids at the time who were quite young, they weren't thinking of poor Harold who had just died. They just saw this massive swimming pool and thought this was now their day to have some fun. And you watch everyone was sort of long-faced, and then these two kids just jumped into the swimming pool and started laughing and having a great time. And you just saw the energy of the whole party lift, you know, the youthful injection into the scenario. And it sounds crazy to say this, but you can almost see it in this vineyard. You know, we've planted all these young vines in amongst these beautiful old girls, and you just see the life coming back into this block. You know, we've obviously helped it along with a bit of compost and mulch and all those things, but it's still it's incredible to see. So I'll just show you here. I mean, most of you have seen the map of the fall. So the Shannon Vineyard is in Paul. If you look on the map, you don't know. Well, there it is. I was going to say it's close to Stellenbosch, but there it's right in Paul with the blue dot. So that's where the Shannon is, and it's a southeast facing slope on decomposed granite, which is fantastic. So the next, so just to give you an idea, sorry, that's our little winery in Salt River. It looks much prettier inside than it does outside. That's so I just want to get to the shot. So that's some of the old vine Shannon in the block. You can see the granitic soil, the quartz component, and that. But just these beautiful old gnarled plants, which have been, as I said, left for dead. And now we're just building carbon in the soil and just bringing life back to that vineyard, which is fantastic. So I think the next, yes. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to come back to this picture now. I want to show you, this is 40-year-old or 39-year-old Cinso in Darling. I just want to go back to show you this photo here, because it's the wine on from, so you've got the two Savage with the red and white, and then you've got Never Been Asked to Dance, which is the windmill. Sorry, the relevance of the windmill on the label of Never Been Asked to Dance, by the way, is I didn't have any water. We had this massive drought in South Africa, and as some of you may know, and we couldn't even turn the taps on. And I'm on a municipal connection in my winery being in the city. And old Agnes happens to have quite a lot of water on her farm. So she helped me out. We used to truck water into Cape Town to clean our picking crates and all that. So that's where the old school farm windmill came into the label. The next label is a wine called Follow the Line, which is it's the first of our white label series with the very basic drawings that Anthony Lane did for me. And Follow the Line was, you know, everyone thinks it's this profound story of how we came about the name and, you know, all the lyrics of a Johnny Cash song or something like that. It wasn't the case. We just, we got directions for this block of Cinso on this guy's farm. And he's a sheep and wheat farmer. His father pulled out most of the vineyards, and there's one or two old vineyards left. And I just got lost. And I phoned him 3 times. And when I phoned him the 3rd time, he said to me in Afrikaans, Duncan, volg die fucking telefoonlyn, which, excuse my language, means follow the fucking telephone line. And I know I shouldn't have said that on the thing, but I did. So we called the wine Follow the Line. I literally stopped my car next to the telephone line because it was the only farm against the mountain, so it made perfect sense. I stopped my bakkie, took a photo of the telephone line, and my mate Ant did the drawing, and that was the start of these very simple labels. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, where's the information? But they're super striking, and we like them, and they seem to sell, so it works. So just to give you an idea, oh, sorry, before I go there. So the Follow the Line is made in Darling. So if you look a little bit up the west coast, it's just in from the ocean. So we're very fortunate in South Africa because obviously we're very marginal. You know, we're only sort of 33, 34 degrees south. I mean, if you look at the guys in Burgundy struggling with heat at 48 degrees north in the last couple of years, if we didn't have the Atlantic Ocean where, you know, on our doorstep, we wouldn't be making wine here. So it's, you can see why the wine industry is where it is. So just to come to the shots here, that is the old Cinso. And the interesting thing about the old Cinso is this photo doesn't quite do it justice. This was just taken on my phone, so it's not exactly the most amazing photo. But this vineyard, if you look at it, all the shoots are moving to one direction, or not shoots, all the arms of the bush vines. So these are all like Never Been Asked to Dance. It's all dry farmed bush vines. This is also granitic soil, but you can see all the arms are moving up the hill. So those of you who've been to Cape Town before, there's a little weather event here from time to time called the Southeaster. It happens to blow quite a lot in summertime. And you can see these poor buggers, they've been blown up this hill. So the wind comes off the Atlantic Ocean, rips over those hills in the background there, and just blows these vines to smithereens. And what happened in the old days is we had a lot of Cinsault planted in South Africa for production. So the reason why these vineyards have got such long arms is because the guys they prune for production. So you had, these long canes pruned to get maximum tonnage off these vines. And then when they stopped bearing, the guys just kind of forgotten about them, So we go back down to, as you can see from this, was pruned, to 2 to 3 buds per vine. We really trying to reestablish a bush shape in these vines because they've become very one-sided. So we're using a lot of water shoot development and things like that to try to get, just to create a bush again, because it's super important that we don't have two scenarios of, what's happening on the one side, on the wind side, in terms of sun exposure, and then what's happening on the other side. But it's such a privilege to be able to work with vineyards like this. This was farmed by one of my good mates who passed away in a car crash a few years ago, Boetie van Reenen. He's the guy who who gave me the idea for Follow the Line. And if it wasn't for Boetie, we probably never would have, headed down this path that we've gone. Such a lacquer oak. And I see there's comments coming here, but I can't read them. So I don't know if they're questions.
There was just one question, Duncan, about the age of the Cinsault, but I think Liz said you said 40 years.
Yeah, so 39, but I mean, 40 just rolls off the tongue a little better.
We'll go through questions later. We'll go through questions later, Duncan.
Okay, cool. No worries. So we're not trying to do anything fancy in the winery with a Cinsault. There's no makeup, there's no new oak here. It's all large format. If you look behind me, those foudre over there, the oval foudre is the Follow the Line. The 2021's already pressed off and in there, and then there's a 600 demi-muir there as well with some Follow the Line in it. So it's not a massive amount of wine, but it's just a very it's just the most beautiful Cinsault. We get this lifted red fruit that you'd expect from Cinsault, but we try to, we want the wine to be a touch more vinous. And when I say vinous, not vinous in terms of extraction, but just a little bit more complex in its flavor spectrum, because I think Cinsault can very easily be one-dimensional and it's going to give you red fruit. You're going to get that sort of lots of strawberries and what have you, but you want some elements there that bring you back to that glass. Wine must never be too obvious, as you all know. So Cinsault has its challenges. We work with a lot of whole bunch, and the stalks from this vineyard are fantastic. So we use a lot of the stalks. Whole bunch has become the very in thing to say if you make wine. Every oak and his dog does whole bunch fermentations these days. But it genuinely does work, but your stalks have got to be right. And from a vineyard like this that ripens, late February or early March, we find that you can literally bury your face in those stalks and they just smell so fantastic. I haven't tried eating them yet, but they really are nice on the nose. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the bottle shots, if that's all right, just so that it gives you a bit of an idea of the next one is called Thief in the Night. It's from the Pekingese Kloof, and the Pekingese Kloof is the most wonderful part of the world. The guys, they're the farmers. They're not have these massive farming empires from apple money. The oaks are growing citrus, and you can imagine with citrus, in COVID, everyone's wanting vitamin C. So the oranges, the lemons, all those kinds of things are there's just no end. The demand is there. It's interesting. My late father-in-law, he had ginger on his farm in the Lowveld. And for those of you who've ever been to the Lowveld, I know this has absolutely nothing to do with the wines, but the Lowveld is a fantastic place. If you go there, you head down into Kruger. It's just the most amazing place. But where he was in a place called Kiepersol, close to White River, the soils, it's like, you can just by accident drop any seed there you want and it will grow. It's tropical, it's fertile, it's the most amazing place to farm if you're farming for production. And he grew a lot of ginger. And it was amazing to track the price of ginger, through the COVID pandemic. mean, it's crazy. I mean, the value of that crop it's always been expensive, but yet the price just went skyrocketed. Anyway, so thief in the night is Pekingese Kloof. Now, the interesting thing with Pekingese Kloof is, with the Grenache, the photo I've got of Pekingese Kloof doesn't do it much justice. So, sorry, just to go on the map here, you can see the Pekingese Kloof. If you go up the west coast, there's Piketberg. It doesn't say Pekingese Kloof, but you can see those two dots up top there, just below Lambert's Bay and then close to Citrus Dal. That's up there. So up the west coast, it's got a bit of elevation. This vineyard's just over 500 meters above sea level. It's we get a nice diurnal shift there. It's cooler at night than it is in a lot of the other places. It gets bloody hot in the day. The thing with the Pekingese Kloof is we've got a lot of solar radiation there. We did a study, or a mate of mine, Jaco Engelbrecht, who consults to me. Does a lot of viticultural consulting. He looked at solar radiations of vineyards in South Africa relative to the areas producing similar varietals in Europe. So he looked at Claret being a very warm region and found Claret to have sort of, I think, 2,500 to 3,000 watts per hour in terms of solar radiation. The Pekingese Kloof is 5,400. So, I mean, it's more than double. But if any variety can handle that, it's Grenache. And for some reason, Grenache just thrives up there. It's quite lucky at the moment because we're seeing South Africa starting to, people have been envious of us that we can grow anything and do whatever we want wherever. But at the same token, the systems that Europe has, I think, force people to do something which people know works in an area, and then they're forced to do it properly, or not do it properly, but then they'll go out of business. But you know what I mean? We're seeing Elgin becoming known for Chardonnay. Stellenbosch has always been known for Cabernet, and that's just being reinforced every year. The Pekingese Kloof for Grenache is just the right place. Darling, everyone all over the years thought Darling was the best place for Sauvignon. It's good for Sauvignon, but Darling Cinsault is just on another level. It's just so, you look at Hermanus, the Walker Bay area, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. It's so nice to see that regions are becoming known for varieties, which is fantastic. So the Pekingese Kloof, it's a 45-year-old dry land vineyard. Unfortunately, it's not really had an impact on the wine. The wine is beautiful. It's supposed to be a straight Grenache, but with the drought, we've had so little grapes on those vines. It's amazing, the vines are incredible plants. I mean, the old Mediterranean wheat is as tough as nails. The drought comes along. It's you don't really notice all the stress and what have you on the actual plant itself in this vineyard. The vines still look the same. They just shed their crop. And it's incredible to see, the grapes just disappear. I have no idea where they go, but the grapes just seem to get less. And the vine just goes into survival mode. And we're starting to see now that this is coming back to normal. We always got good crops out of that vineyard. So where the wine is supposed to be sort of a 85% Grenache, we use a little bit of Cinsault from the neighboring vineyard and a bit of Syrah from the vineyard on the other side. It's only been 60 to 65% Grenache. This year again will be the first year that the wine is going to be Grenache on label, and we're just seeing that balance restored, post drought in Cape Town, which has been fantastic. It wasn't so fantastic when we had 100 mils of rain in the middle of harvest this year, but everyone kind of survived. You're not so happy when the rain falls at the wrong time, but you kind of like, in a way, you can never complain about rain, especially in a place like South Africa. So that gives you an idea of the Pekingese Kloof. My photo is not, again, just a good old iPhone shot. I've realized through this whole Zoom thing, by the time I get my act together and get a proper photographer and videographer involved in my business, COVID's going to be done and everyone's going to be traveling again. But we need to get some better photos. That's the Pekingese Kloof. It doesn't do justice, but what it does show, it's again dry farmed bush vines. It's just a bush vine. It's a beautiful thing. It's in our nature as human beings to want to perfect everything. I like my cellar to be, ship shape. But, you want to, at the same token, people plant vineyards and the poles are all straight, which they should be. The wires are all perfect. The canopy is growing. The shoots are positioned in an upright fashion. It's fantastic and it looks great. I always say you must never trust the farmer. Like in South Africa, you guys drive on the same side of the road as us, so it's fine. But you know, if you see a farmer and his one arm is more tan than his other arm, then you know he's a bad farmer because he doesn't get out of his bucky that much. You know, you've got to be out and about and doing your thing. And the same with the vines. You know, if they're too manipulated, I think you can almost, it becomes, I don't know, it loses its authenticity. It loses its sense of place. Where a bush vine, or if it's on a trellis and it's a sprawling canopy that's using, like Syrah, for example. Syrah doesn't like to be a bush vine. It's a very floppy grower. And yet Syrah in the wind just makes the best wines. You just have to look to Cote T. And there, you know, the guys obviously using the single or the double stakes. We've got an old Syrah vineyard for the Savage Red, which is on a very basic trellis. So it's just a sprawling canopy, and it just allows the vines that opportunity just to hang on a little bit. You know, they're not completely hanging to the ground, but you get that natural movement of the canopy, which is fantastic. So you get that sort of filtered light through the day, which is great. And a bush vine, you know, Grenache is a great variety as a bush vine. The best bush vine variety is Mourvèdre. Mourvèdre just is, it's the weirdest thing to see it, just like straight upright. It's incredible. Yeah. Okay, let me just go back here a second. How am I doing for time? Am I all right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the next one is the tree that's leaning to one side. That's one called the Girl Next Door. The Girl Next Door is a little vineyard in a place called Fishhoek. So those of you who know Cape Town, Fishhoek is right at the bottom of the peninsula. So as you go down here, you can see the little marker below Constantia on the map. And you know, it's not really it's not, you know, there's lots of houses there, so it becomes bloody difficult, bloody expensive to plant vineyards there. But what happened was there was a property development done in the area, and you know what it's like. You know, I don't know if any of you are in property development, but you know, you're in the business of sales. So how do you make more money off your property? You plant a vineyard, you plant an olive grove, you call the roads Merlot and Cabernet, and then everyone wants to pay more money and get their little plot in the development. So these guys planted this vineyard, and then they realized, oh, no one knows how to farm this damn thing. What now? So it was this 0.4 of a hectare wheat patch on a sandy gravel soil overlooking the Atlantic. I mean, that's about as maritime as you could get. You know, it's got bloody sea influence coming from every direction. But we took this little vineyard on a number of years ago. The first wine we made from the block was 2014. But before that, we picked some grapes. The guys asked us to take it in. And I looked at the vineyard and I looked at the grapes and I said, no chance. I said, throw that stuff on the ground. It looks terrible. So we took the grapes in and we were going to throw it away, actually. And then I thought, bugger it, you know, let's just put it in a plastic fermenter and see what happens. And it shows the quality of terroir, because these grapes looked as dodgy as they could be. And yet in this little fermenter with no inoculation, no nothing, we don't inoculate anyway, but we just left it be. We didn't work the skins, we didn't do anything. This beautiful wine came out the other end. And needless to say, I went back to them and I said, well, you know, guys, this wasn't too bad, but I wanted a good deal. So I didn't tell them how good it really was. And they needed someone to look after the place, you know. So I said to them, okay, cool. I'll farm this and make it look good, and I'll do that all in exchange for the grapes. And they said, that's a good deal. And I said, that's a good deal. And off we went. And I have to say, it was a good deal up until the time the birds moved in with a drought, because it's been a challenge to farm there. But we've taken a long-term approach there. I want to show you a couple of pictures here. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm going too far here. So this is the vineyard called the Girl Next Door. What we've had to do here is the vineyard was planted with irrigation and was neglected, obviously. So these vines took a bit of a hammering. And you can imagine a vineyard planted with irrigation in a windy area that close to the sea. It's a real challenge to farm. And it's municipal irrigation as well. So if I'd put this water on during the drought, I would have got arrested. So we had to think of other plans to try to get this vineyard to survive. So what we've done is when the start of the drought happened, we're just through looking after it and pruning carefully. It's taken us 5 years to prune this thing properly. You know, it's like a cut. You guys know the drill. I mean, you all know wine. But if you get a cut on your arm, it heals really quickly and easily. If you chop your arm off, it doesn't come back. You know, these poor guys, if you make big cuts when you're pruning, you damage the longevity of the vine. So it's all a long-term game, you know, very small. So I'll just show you. Here's my best employee. It's my father. He's retired. I don't have to pay him anything. He just works for me for free. So it's fantastic. And he and I we farm that on our own, and we do everything ourselves there, which is great. It's our little labor of love. But you can see what we've had to do to get this vineyard, to wean it off water. You know, it's like a heroin addiction for these plants. They become so used to that little dripper. So we've had to mulch. We've driven in massive amounts of mulch. So this is on 0.4 of a hectare. It's 120 cubes of mulch, and we top it up with 20 to 40 cubes every year. And under that mulch is loads of compost. And our drive now is to build soil carbon. And if you've got carbon in your soils, you improve the water retention. The thing is, you walk a fine line, because the more carbon you have, the more vigor you have, and that then internally obviously affects your wine quality. So it's trying to maintain a balance. And this year, for the first time, without water, we saw the canopy. You know, we picked that canopy before those grapes before the big rain, and it was just incredible. Normally, there's very few leaves left. This year, we still had quite a few leaves left. The vineyard was in stress, which is how it should be when you pick the grapes. Excuse me. But the results have been amazing, and all of that's just attributable to actions in the vineyard. And the thing is, it's amazing about viticultural work is I can scrub things in the cellar as much as I want. I can pump the wine a little bit slower. I can do 2 minutes extra on a punch down or a pump over or something like that. But how do you quantify that difference? You know, you see tiny little increments of increases in quality or whatever it might be. Within the vineyard, though, you know, I can go in mulch like this in one season, and you see a result immediately. It's the most rewarding thing, you know, and it's fantastic when you start to see the results, not only from a growth point of view, because that's also the risk. We're not doing it for pretty plants. We're doing it for great wine, and that's the thing, is to try and make sure you have that balance. So yeah, that's us in pruning time. And then, okay, sorry, let's just go back here quickly. Sorry. Okay, so the last one, all of your, or the last two wines, all of your, the pictures in the way of those ones. I don't know how to do that, change that. But are we there yet? It's got the old wind turbine on the well, not the old, it's the new thing that's sort of dominates the skyline of many places these days, or the horizon, should I say. It's Touriga and Syrah. It's a 50-50 blend. We pick it generally all on the same day, just because the vineyard's bloody far away. It's 3.5 hours drive, and it generally ripens at the same time as well. This year wasn't the case. The two vineyards, you know, it's amazing to see how the dynamic has changed, you know, how things can be affected with seasonal variations. You know, we picked for the last 3 years this vineyard on the same day, both blocks. This year they were 3 weeks apart. It's incredible. So Touriga and Syrah from David Trafford. Some of you might know who David Trafford is. He's got the Trafford wines and a little property called Seine out in Malchus. David's definitely one of the nicest oaks I've ever met. He's a good friend. And I said to David, David, this place is amazing. I went out there, and if you've never been there before, you must go. Charlotte, the winemaker, is fantastic as well. And there's just no soil. It's just rock. It's shale with rock, river pebble. And it's very unassuming when you drive in there. It's very flat. But when you walk on the soils, it's crunchy soils. You know, there's just no soil. If I sent each of you out with a bucket and I said, go and fill this bucket with soil, you'd be gone for the whole day. And you wouldn't come back with a bucket of soil, and you'd be very unhappy. But let me see if this photo, sorry, I don't know how to jump forward to the photos so you've got to see them all like 500 times. But there you go. So that gives you an idea of Malchus. So there's the Breda River heading down towards the ocean. lots of guys like to go skiing and everything and just enjoy a nice relaxing time along the Breda River. And then you come up here to these vines that take a lot of strain. There's, wherever you've got shale in the soil, there's not a lot of water holding capacity. So the vines take a bit of a beating up there, but it just makes for very interesting wines. And you can imagine with Touriga, there's a lot more muscle, a lot more extract. The wine is a little bit more powerful. When I approached David to be able to buy some grapes from him, he said no. And then I said, David, are you sure? And he said, oh, okay. David's just so nice that he can't really say no. So now we've got this long-term deal going, and it's fantastic. We've mulched this vineyard extensively. We've spent a huge amount of cash there now, just to try and allow those vines to be able to thrive in an environment that's very challenging. And you've got to be in it for the long-term game. I think that's the key to this whole thing. It's so important. So that's a wine in our range, which is probably the most muscular, the most fuller in style, and a little bit bigger, and needs time. People, in the new world, we're releasing wines when they're young because that's what people expect. And you're off to your wines go off to the critics and everything when they're young and awkward and angular, and everyone rates them. So you want to put something out there that's showing itself a little bit earlier, but at the same time, you also want these wines to be able to age, because that's one of the great romances of wine is that when you're sitting with mates and you pull corks on old bottles, and when you get to a good one, it just can blow your mind, as you all know, and it's fantastic. So I don't know, time-wise, I'm probably running short of time here, so I'm just going to move on to every year we try and experiment with something, and a few years ago we did it with a straw wine, and this is up at a farm called Tierup, which is in the Piccaninny Kloof, so also just up from where we get our Grenache. It's 770 meters above sea level. It's a Chenin Blanc vineyard, and if the vineyard that you see at the bottom of these nets is the vineyard we use. It's not some 50, 60-year-old vineyard that's bush vines and been there, planted by some, famous guy or something like that. It's a super simple, trellised vineyard at the lowest part of the farm. And what I like about it for straw wine, it's got massive amounts of acidity. So, we pick those grapes with so much, they come in at the potential alcohol of, say, 12.5, or they hit those racks at 12.5, potential alcohol with huge, huge acidity. So by the time we're bottling a straw wine at between 300 and 400 grams of sugar, we've got this freshness in the wine, which just sort of carries it. And we're not looking to dominate the sweet wine market anytime soon. We make 300 liters of this stuff every year. We didn't bottle a 19 because it wasn't just at the level we wanted, but we'll have a 20 again. And it's just something that's a bit of fun, It's nice to be able to have something in the cellar which is interesting and there's a bit of a talking point. And in 10, 15 years time, those bottles start to develop a bit and they become interesting. And that's when we like to drink them. So yeah, so that's kind of our story. And the one that I didn't, just going back to the range photos quickly. Sorry, my staff, it's Friday, so they're getting quite excited because it's almost home time. If you heard that, the screams of joy in the background there. So the wines on the left over here, the Savage Red and White, the white I mentioned, the Sauvignon Semillon generally. We've gone back to our roots there at Cape Point. We just made Sauvignon Semillon. We worked with a variety there. It's funny in a way, because Sauvignon is almost like deemed as not being sexy in terms of the fine wine side of things. But I do believe there's an opportunity in the market there. I mean, every oak and his dog's making Chenin, and we make one in the range. I do believe that there's a nice minerality and a precision to those wines, which is great with food. And I love the vineyards we work with. So we've stuck to our guns there. The Savage Red is a wine which is super interesting because being a blend, as I mentioned at the beginning, with the Cinsaults and the Grenaches that became Follow the Line, Thief in the Night. The core of that wine has always been a vineyard in a place called Kales at a Feed. So most of you won't know where Kales at a Feed is, but it's actually Stellenbosch, and Stellenbosch just rolls off the tongue a little better than Kales at a Feed. So we say Stellenbosch. But it's grown. It's that front section of Stellies, so it's all decomposed granite, very sandy soils. The quartz fraction's completely broken up, so it's just sand. and then clay at about 1.5 to 2 meters. So that's always formed about 60 odd or more % of the Savage Red. It's now 100% of the wine as of the 2017 vintage. And we're just seeing that purity of that vineyard. It's been organically farmed since 2006. It's now biodynamically farmed. It's not, we're busy waiting on our certification, but we're not doing that because we want to, sell wine with a nice biodynamic sticker. Those oaks who run the biodynamic program, there's so many things that you end up paying a lot of money for just a sticker, something that's part of a certification body. It's a percentage of turnover you need to pay. And I'm not going to pay some guy in tight pants and pointy shoes in Belgium or something like that a whole bunch of cash just because we're farming biodynamically. That's not what it's about. So we do it because we think we get the best expression of Syrah on those soils, farming in a very simple way. And what we try to do now is take an organic view to most of the blocks. About a third of what we farm is organic. A lot of them are in transition, but it's not like a switch. You don't just turn the light on and off and it's organic. It's a 10-year process for us. A vineyard that's 40 years old, a dryland vineyard that's 40 years old, that's had herbicide sprayed for 40 years, you suddenly stop spraying herbicide, suddenly there's weed competition, those vines don't know whether they're coming or going, and you'll lose half of them. So we're weaning them off, and you have to also build soil carbon first, so through the mulching and the compost, all those elements. We're trying to do things to make it sustainable as possible in the future, that 40-year-old vineyard becomes a 100-year-old vineyard, and hopefully we can do that. I won't be around to see it, but someone else will do it. And we get to, I think the beauty of the industry, someone was asking me as well about another project I'm involved with in the form of the Love Boat. The Love Boat was, when you're in the wine industry, you get to sleep with amazingly sexy people like this. I don't know if you can all see the photo. That's a beautiful human being called Adi Bardenhorst. This was the Love Boat wines. When he was asking me about the Love Boat wines, it was all hatched on a trip to Norway. Adi and I, we thought we'd get creative with our accommodation. So we booked a boat to sleep on, which was a bloody great idea. But they happened to have their 50-year storm that night. And the two of us, we were walking along the jetty, and the guy that was leading us down the jetty, there's some beautiful boats along the jetty. So we go, is this our boat? He says, no. Is this our boat? No. And we get to this tiny little, basically a dinghy at the end of the jetty, and he says, this is your boat. So Adi and I had to cuddle up in this little thing, and we thought our best strategy, the Norwegians, the Scandinavians like to drink, I have to say, and they like to drink some hard stuff. So we made a rookie mistake of heading out and drinking with these guys, but we thought, considering the storm, we were safer in the bar than we were in our boat. And this photo was taken at 3 o'clock in the morning when we had a lot to drink, and we were sharing our single bed on this little boat. So as we do, we decided to to hatch a plan and do the Love Boat wines. And the crazy thing is that in the history of the Cape Winemakers Guild, the very first collaboration was the collaboration between Adi Bardenhorst and Duncan Savage, called the Love Boat, about sleeping in a little bloody bed on a boat in Stavanger in Norway. It was nothing profound about it. But it was a great journey, and it was great fun, and I think that's what the wine industry is about. If we all take ourselves too seriously, then life's going to suck. So it's all about, I think, having fun and enjoying it, but also doing what we love and having a good time while we do it. So that's my story. If there's any questions, you guys are welcome to fire away.
Thanks, Duncan. I'm just going to go through the chat box quickly. From Liz, the logistics of picking and getting all the grapes to the cellar, because from what I could see on that map, you must be traveling about a distance of 500 or more kilometers from Malchus to Pikkeneskloof.
Yeah, it's a 50 to 60,000 kilometer a year business, unfortunately. But
50 to 60,000 kilometers.
Yeah. No, I'm a sucker for punishment. Every year I say I'm going to cut vineyards, but we've become so sort of involved with these places. It's great. Winnie, at the end of the day, I throw my board in the back of the bucky, and we always find a way along the way. You'll see all the vineyards; none of them are too far from the sea. So there's a strategic dynamic there too. I'm pleased to see you haven't nodded off yet there, Mark.
He might just now. Tell me something, Duncan. Carolyn says that the Wine Society sells your dirt tracks and so.
Yeah, so Dirt Track is a Negos product we do, or wine we do, should I say, or range. So the idea behind the Savage wines, everything is made in our little winery in Salt River, and we are involved with every element of the process. So we farm, we produce, we have our own, everything's bottled here, matured here, and as a result, if we're trying to do everything with a tiny team ourselves, production is limited. So we make 45,000 bottles a year total production, so it's very small. And we do then occasionally some Negos. So Dirt Track we got together with Joe Locke, and Joe, we hatched a plan to come up with a brand that was a lot more affordable. We do a Sauvignon, which is a very much more everyday style. Ticks the boxes of that sort of nice upfront fruit lift that you can just crack every day. I mean, Savage White, you can smash it every day at the swimming pool if you'd like to, but just likes a little bit of food, and likes to, I don't know, just likes a bit of time in bottle. Where Dirt Track is made to be, you screw the cap off and you can drink it out the bottle if you'd like to. So yeah.
Well, I'll have to pick some up when I'm in England then, I suppose. And then just to show you that Mark Allen wasn't fast asleep, he was just trying to explain to the rest of the audience about a bucky, because nobody would know what a bucky is, but a bucky is a pickup. And he didn't even know how to spell it, Duncan. So who knows? Then I wanted to ask you about the vineyards at Malchus. Did Trafford actually plant them, or were there vineyards there before he bought the property?
No, there were no vineyards there. David planted them. So David's partner in the business is Simon Farr, ex-Babendum, and Simon's a great egg. I've gotten to know Simon over the last few years, and they together put the whole thing together and ended up going and planting out there. And David's had a house along the river for a number of years. And, when you're in holiday mode, you're relaxed, and he kept walking up the hill and having a look at the property up there. And then one day just decided to put in an offer. Got chatting to Simon. As Simon says, he basically turned him upside down, shook all the money out of his pockets, and went and bought a farm. So it's, yeah. Now I'm glad they did though. It's a beautiful place.
And how old are those vineyards, Duncan? Sorry, I must have missed it.
No, the vines aren't old. They were all planted early 2000s up until today. They're still planting. So it's there's not much age in the vines. But the thing is that old vines are a super important thing. You're protecting part of your heritage, but you also have to start somewhere. And I think a lot of people, are building their businesses on old vine plantings where they're buying grapes. But if you're not reinvesting in those vineyards, they're going to come out at some stage. I mean, it's the circle of life. It doesn't only apply to us; it applies to vineyards too. And if you're not rejuvenating all the time, it's a huge problem. So it's like Cinsault, for example, Cinsault Grenache. It's a huge privilege for me to work with the vineyards I work with. But if you plant new young Cinsault or young Grenache, trying to make wine from those vineyards is very difficult. Rosé is fantastic, but quality wine from young vines, you need to almost make rosé for the first 30 years, and then you can start making quality wines. But if people aren't planting those vineyards, where's the industry going to be in the next 30, 40 years? And it's a bit of a, I mean, for those of you who know, I mean, obviously there's less vines here in South Africa than there are in Bordeaux. So it's not a hell of a lot around. And with the COVID scenario and the liquor bans here, the prediction is that at the peak of our plantings, we were at 110,000 hectares. I think we had 90,000. Prediction is that we're probably going to end up as little as 75,000 hectares, which is crazy, And unfortunately, a lot of these really old, beautiful vineyards will fall by the wayside, and we'll end up losing some of them.
Well, I mean, that's of course where the wonderful work of the Old Vine Project comes in. And then leading on to the COVID and everything, Richard wants to know about the challenging times for South Africa with the exports, and particularly in COVID, as we said. And have you considered new or different markets? And can you also tell us where your markets are in the world?
Yeah, so we, the COVID is obviously for everyone a curveball. I mean, the wine industry has it tough, but the poor guys in the restaurant trade, I mean, it's, oh, what a disaster. And in South Africa, there's not very much, there's lots of empty promises, but the poor guys don't get much cash, out of government. So it's quite difficult for them to survive. And a lot have fallen by the wayside. So, from our point of view, it was interesting because we actually had probably our best year ever last year. We normally, the wines sell out fairly quickly. Our private customer allocation in Cape Town normally sells out in a month. This year we sold out in 4 hours. And I think it's, I'd like to say that I think the wine quality is getting better every year and the wines are solid. But I think there were also a lot of people sitting at home who were incredibly bored and sitting on the internet. And suddenly they weren't going out and having dinner at restaurants and they got a bit of cash to spend. And a lot of mates, I mean, from my mates here, guys had really great years on the small side of things. The problem was for the bigger producers, guys that are on supermarket shelves, wines by the glass in restaurants. You can imagine those guys they took a big knock. And to try and recover from that is hell of a difficult. So it's a real mixed bag across the industry. We count our lucky stars. I mean, we've been very fortunate to date. We've got a great following with our loyal customers here in Cape Town and abroad. Our best market is the UK. We work with a company there called Swig, of Damon and Robin. Damon, I don't know if you know Damon. We deal with Damon Damon's market. He's a good mate. He and I've worked with Damo since 2003, and we've just become, really great mates. And it's such a privilege to be able to do business with someone who's such a close friend, and they do a great job for me in the UK, which is fantastic. I have a great importer in the Netherlands, Paul Frankhausen from Wijnkoperij de Lange. We obviously do business in the States, Hong Kong, China, loads of different countries. But it's funny, you always have places where you do better and others not. So the States has always been a tough nut to crack for us. The States just sort of, I think a lot of the people, whether you're South Africa or if you're South Africa, then it's just a bit below the equator. So it's for a lot of the people there, they don't really have much of a reference point unless they've been here. So it's always quite difficult, and with a strong wine industry of their own, the market is quite challenging. And it's expensive to do business there. You've got to spend a lot of time there, and it gets tough. So if you're not selling a lot of wine, it's not easy. But sorry, just one other thing. I think the challenge for wine producers in South Africa, the challenges are still coming. I think the market, a lot of people have got less cash. It's going to be tough the next couple of years for everyone, I think.
Right, are there any other questions? Oh, Duncan. Very, very well done. Thank you very much. I always learn a lot when I listen to you, and I don't listen to you enough. So thank you very much for indulging me in particular, and all my friends around the world. And I hope that there's enough of it to go around for all of them to can buy at least The Girl Next Door, or Are We There Yet? Or Shall We, no, not Shall We Dance? Never Been Asked to Dance. So, thank you very much.
Well, listen, guys, thank you very much for having me. It's really lucky to be able to do, these presentations. It's funny in some ways because we reached a lot more people almost through Zoom. We did a tasting with some top restaurants around the world, where if you actually go there and visit them, they're all so busy that you maybe see the som and one or two other people and pop your head in the kitchen and say, how's it to the chef? Now you end up doing a Zoom chat with, most of the staff. And it's actually quite, it's cool on one level, but it's not the social element that we all love in this industry that we hope comes back quite soon. So hopefully I can, if you guys have come to Cape Town, come and visit us in dodgy old Salt River here. It's, don't be scared when you get here. Your car won't be on bricks when you go outside, I can assure you. And once you're inside it, you could be in a little winery in Burgundy or something. You won't notice all the dodginess. We look forward to receiving you.
Well, thanks, Duncan. What I'm looking forward to is just a hug when I can see you. But anyway, so thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend and keep on doing what you're doing. We all love it, and we hope to see you soon here again.